Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. We are here with my good friend
Eric, aka known as Pack Battle.
Eric Pack Battle, and do me a favor, talk right in there so everyone can hear you. Eric and I just wrapped up day 2 of the Houston Collecticon here, and gosh, it was a super busy show.
As always.
Tons of fun, but we wanted to do a quick chat after the Collecticon ended before Eric heads home. Because we haven't had a chance to do, like a podcast with you.
Yeah, for sure. I know we first met at Front Row Vegas, but we haven't had a chance to do this, so honored to be here.
Yes, and I'm honored, honestly, because, I remember when I was starting to get involved in vending outside of my hometown, I was looking up content, and obviously I saw Dylan and Bulbasaur, but then you were basically the other person that I was watching, and I remember all those deals you were doing with the 151 bundles back when it was like $300 for a case.
Yeah, I was giving deals.
You were giving out deals. I remember
$325 for a case.
I legit remember you doing those deals, and I was like, "How is he possibly doing these deals?" But I didn't realize that you had distro access, and we're getting some cards that way, which is cool. But before we get into the details, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that we're here in Houston, and we're really appreciative of the community. Tons and tons of people came up to, I'm sure, to your table, also to mine, thanked us for the content that we're making, and they were really warm, and you probably signed a bunch of binders like I did. We're really grateful for all of that, and so one of the reasons we do this kind of content is to give back to you guys. One of the things we're going to talk about today is Eric's backstory of how he got involved in the space, vending in general, but then also, many of you maybe don't know this, but Eric also still has a full-time job in corporate America, 2 kids, wife, the whole shebang, and still manages to do all the things that you're doing, which is incredibly impressive. So I want to talk about that and let people have a chance to understand, is it even possible, realistic, to be able to accomplish as much as you're accomplishing on a daily basis? What goes into that? And let's kind of maybe start there. So, Eric, tell me, as far as Pokemon is concerned, how'd you get back involved after, maybe childhood? You probably had a little childhood collection kind of thing, but when did you get back involved in Pokemon and collecting and vending and that kind of stuff?
So I think my story is very similar to most people. Started when I was a kid, would collect a little bit, played the games growing up, but my family wasn't really about buying me a lot of packs all the time, so I had a very small collection, nothing crazy. Kind of stopped doing that, got into like Yu-Gi-Oh, then stopped with Yu-Gi-Oh and started watching Dragon Ball, and then I got into Dragon Ball, and then probably from like a good almost 10 plus years stopped collecting, and then kind of got back into it during COVID, like a lot of people did, right? Started collecting, one time I saw that Hidden Fates ETBs were available on Walmart. I'm like, let me go check it out. Could never find anything. I was like, this is a myth. There's no such thing as these. And then one day I got super lucky. We were buying stuff at the grocery store, and I saw a full restock of Hidden Fates ETBs.
So we're talking like 2018, 2019.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, this is awesome. And I bought them all. I ripped them all. Didn't get anything. And I'm like, all right, cool. But then
we love Pokemon.
I'm like, we're in there. So started, collecting more during COVID. I was that guy going to Target in the mornings trying to find stuff, never found anything. And then kind of slowly started going into, creating my own LLC, because, I can't get anything at the stores. Let me try to get a distro. And that was early 2021 when I did that.
How'd you get inspired to do that? Because it's not just like, hey, maybe I can get it wholesale. You probably maybe had a content creator or a business that you maybe got that idea from?
Yeah, so obviously when you're heading up these targets, you talk to a lot of people, and then people that start opening up their own shops and we get product at wholesale. We don't have to worry about this and that. So I'm like, I started doing a little bit of research, how I can get distro, and then, created my LLC. The wife helped me come up with Pack Battle. So this started way before even our vendor journey. Pack Battle was created in 2021. With the hopes of just being an online store, get distro, sell it all.
I love that. Shout out the wives. They always have the best ideas.
The wives, they do. They help out a ton. More than you guys probably see, right? They're in the back end, and they do everything.
Making it happen.
So shout out to Fran and my wife, Alondra. So, so started doing that, kind of creating videos of just pack openings. Wasn't really showing my face too much, but a lot of people probably don't know this either. Kind of off topic, but I used to create a lot of tech content on TikTok. So I was, building PCs and doing that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that I had a pretty good following on TikTok, about 200,000 followers for tech.
That's great. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, so I was doing that. So I got comfortable showing my face.
Yes.
Recording myself, showing my face. So then when I started doing the, Pokemon stuff, I was a little bit more comfortable doing it.
Yeah, you're very natural. I remember like watching your first few videos. It was like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, like I definitely, felt comfortable talking. I don't really cringe at myself anymore like I used to.
Totally.
That's the big one that I think most people struggle with. They kind of see themselves back and they're like, oh, I don't know, that's not it.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not easy to see yourself on camera, and not every interaction that you have on camera with a stranger is going to be a really like exciting, wholesome, positive one. And so like, it can be tough to watch that footage back.
You deal with a lot of people that you can tell they're very antisocial. They're trying their best, and I enjoy it. Anyone that comes talk to me, I talk to everybody.
Agreed.
But like I said, was just kind of focused on trying to create an online store to sell product. Realize, since I'm so new to the game, that I wasn't really going to be allocated as much stuff, because at that time, Pokemon was pure allocations, right?
Yeah.
You could be a new account. You can ask for 1,000 booster boxes. I got 2.
Right.
So it wasn't really stable. Whatever I got, I would sell. And then fast forward 2022, I believe, is when the very first ever collectathon happened. And it actually happened where I live in Frisco, Texas.
Okay. But it was a smaller show back then.
It was smaller, right? So found out about that, and that was my very first ever convention for cards, and I was like mind blown. I was like, this is awesome.
How big was it?
Probably, if we had to guess, probably 100, 200 tables maybe. If I had to guess, I don't remember exactly.
And you went to the show as a buyer.
I was a buyer, so I was out there just kind of with my own personal collection stuff that I had been ripping for the last year or so. And just doing trades, right? I was never really about the life of dropping money. I'm just trying to trade. And that's when I learned the whole, hey, we taking your stuff at, 70, 80%. And that's how I learned that side of things, because I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah.
But I really, really liked that. And I kind of told my wife that year, I'm like, I want to vend one day. But then we're talking 2022. Fast forward, it took me almost 2 years to actually do it, built up a bigger collection. And like you said, everyone has like that inspiration.
Yep.
I used to watch a lot of vendor POVs from the sneaker community.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a sneakerhead myself, not really. I don't go to the conventions, but I just like the interactions.
Totally.
Like going back and forth.
I remember seeing some of those too, right? They like open the box and like look at the shoe, and they're like, oh, well, this goes for that. Yeah, that's
so I like that aspect of it. I mean, my wife would tell me like, why do you watch those? You don't even like sneakers like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just like the interactions and the deals and going back and forth.
Well, we now have people who watch our channel who say the same thing. They don't even collect. They're just here to watch all the deals happen.
So, and then was it December 2023? Dylan the Mobile Stores video popped up. I'm like, oh my god, people do this for Pokemon?
Yeah.
And there was very few people doing it out. It was maybe 3 or 4 people was watching Dylan's stuff, and then one day I was like, let me try it. Let me go. I'll take my whole personal collection. I probably had $1,500 worth of singles.
Yeah.
And $1,000. I remember I went to the bank and took out $1,000 cash to get ready for the first show. And then someone hit me up, and it was a very small local show. It was probably 20 vendors.
Yeah.
Tables were $50. I'm like, this
Sounds
is a great,
very familiar.
great entry point. Got my camera, got my setup, everything. My very first video was slightly a fail because the camera angle was pretty much staring at me the whole time, and you could see people's hands reaching over, but you couldn't really see their faces.
The interactions were just kind of half.
Yeah, and that like I said, I was comfortable on camera, but it was also kind of awkward because at the time, really no one was doing it. So I'm here setting up my camera, and people are kind of like looking at me.
What are you doing? Yeah,
and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, here I bought this, and that. People are just kind of like staring at me. It was kind of awkward initially. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get my feet wet and see, am I gonna like this? Because maybe I try it out and I don't like it. It looked fun on TV or watching the Mobile Store, but maybe I don't. So
Absolutely.
I started off with that small show. Actually ended up really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So like I said, I was just doing singles and sealed products since I had distro.
So you recorded at your first ever show.
First ever show.
See, that's something I think is super rare. Like some people are gonna more
Try it
often
out
than not,
first.
they're gonna want to. Okay, can I vend? Am I good at it?
Yeah.
Does it feel comfortable before they start to record themselves? But you were like, dude, I'm diving all the way
I
in.
went straight into it, and I already had a camera because of the TikTok that I was doing.
I knew what you were doing there.
Yeah, so I had the Sony ZV-1, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go spend money on a camera. I got one. I got mics that I was getting sponsored. They'll send me stuff out to try out. So I'm like, I had mics, I had everything ready
You're
to
already
go.
that guy. I love it.
I was like, it was trial and error because, I quickly realized that my camera would overheat. So I had to, figure out the best setup, but just thugged it out and said, let me try it out and see how it goes. And like I said, my first one was kind of a fail, but I quickly just kind of went for it. So that show happened late February, and then 2 weeks later, Dallas Collecticon. And
so your second show ever is Collecticon that you've ended
the
at?
Dallas Collecticon
Bro,
in
that's
2024.
crazy. That's crazy.
And I was on the website getting ready to buy. Collecticon tables, you can't get one table, you have to get two, and they're $350 each. So that's a $700 entry just to get into Collecticon.
Yeah, big investment.
I was like, whoa. I was trying to get one table, and by the time I realized you can't get one table, they sold out. So I kind of reached out to folks on Facebook and stuff, and luckily someone said they had a table, and they just sold it to me at cost, and I set up with one table in Dallas Collecticon, and that was my very first ever Collecticon. And initially, I said, you know what? I like this. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to stick to the local ones. I'll wait around. And then fast forward a week, 2 weeks later, people are hyping up Cali. Cali Collecticon.
Gotta go to
LA
Los
Collecticon.
Angeles.
We got to go to Los Angeles. And, I was like, I didn't plan for it. I didn't get any tables, no flights or anything. I was like, And I started getting that FOMO. I'm like, damn. I
Don't want to miss out on the deals and the chance to...
I really want to go.
Yeah.
And I kind of told my wife, I'm like, hey, I want to go to Dallas or the LA Collecticon. But tickets are like $700 per flight. I'm like, I got family over there. I'm going to fly out, go do the show, stay with family, and then come back.
Wow.
And I think that was a great choice because that LA Collecticon had some very viral clips that I think projected me to kind of take off.
Yeah.
I had a very viral clip with Jason Page. I'm sure a lot of you might have saw that interaction with Jason Page. Mystic was doing like a challenge, and he stopped by my table.
Yep.
Those two videos alone did numbers on social media, and I think like that's what propelled me forward. And then you know what? At that point, I say, you know what? Let me try to do as many as I can.
Yeah.
So I committed. Just send it. I'm like, just go for it. And I did Houston, and then I did Orlando. I would take the family whenever I could. Like Orlando's a great spot to take the family.
Yeah.
I missed one Collecticon last year, and it was Richmond. That's the only one I missed, but I did all of them. I think it was 12 shows total, plus the local shows. And then fast forward this year, there's just like shows every week.
Yeah.
Collecticon added like 18 shows now. Can't do them all, but I'm trying to do as many as I can.
Yeah.
So.
I love that idea to just kind of
go for it.
Yeah, we'll make a decision and then go all the way in, right? Because the other thing that I know that did for you from like a social media standpoint is it kind of made your content synonymous with Collecticon in a lot of people's minds, right? They're like, okay, I'm thinking about going to Collecticon. Let's check the internet for what that experience might be like, and pops up your video because you've got that in the thumbnail, you've got it in the title, and like you're there, and you're able to show people what it's like to be at a Collecticon. Similar maybe to how I was with Front Row, right? Because I was making a lot of those videos at Front Row before maybe some other people were doing
Exactly.
it. So when people search Front Row Card Show, what's that like? They see some of our videos.
Yeah, great point. I literally did that. I would watch your videos because when I did my very first Front Row this year in Vegas.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me check it out, see what it's looking like. And, it looks like you're having a great time. I'm like, let's try it out. And it's Vegas, why not, right?
Yeah.
So, it's been fun. I still enjoy doing it, and I'll probably continue doing it for the foreseeable future. So it's been hectic, though, like you said. Got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk a lot about that today. And, before we kind of dive into that next part of the conversation about kind of how you're balancing all these things that are going on, talk about the lessons that you've learned, right? Because the Eric Pack battle that is in front of me now, who just wrapped up Collecticon in Houston, from an experience and decision-making standpoint, is probably totally different than the person who signed up for that original one in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some of the things that you've learned?
Yeah, like you said, you learn a lot, right? Because when you're first starting off, you're kind of getting your feet wet, how things work. The biggest thing for me was kind of finding my niche, right? Like what I'm good at, I wasn't coming in with 50 grand ready to ball out, right? I wasn't buying ponchos. I'm not buying gold stars and stuff like that. And I quickly learned that I was very, very good with modern. With the 151, ever since day one, I focused a lot on 151s. I ripped so much 151.
Really?
So
Okay.
I had duplicates to the moon.
Yeah.
So, and then I had the booster bundles, and I was giving people deals with those, and I learned that, 151 was great. It was selling great. People started dubbing me Mr. 151.
Yep.
So, and then, kind of like the Pokeballs inspired that. Funny enough, though, this was created. My wife made this logo.
Really?
It was designed for my shirts.
Yeah.
I used to be a polo. Now it's like a baseball.
Yeah,
But
it's a baseball
she created
tee.
this design before 151 came out.
Yeah.
But it's funny. But it kind of mimics 151 because of the Pokeballs. Like I said, I stuck to modern because I felt like that was working with me, and it's what I could afford. So I was like, I'm gonna stick to this. I learned my niche. I know what people come and sell me.
Yeah.
There's been some times that I've bought certain cards. I'm like, maybe this is a good idea, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Because it's just there's no market. Or at least there's not a market for me.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own style. So learning that, learning how to balance everything, learning how to edit the videos and stuff like that. So a lot of that was just kind of a learning experience, and just kind of learn as you go. You figure out what works, what doesn't work. You know, a lot of hiccups on the way, right? There's been plenty of times that my mic situation was messed up, and just still constantly learning to this day.
I appreciate you saying that, Eric. And again, it kind of speaks to one of the reasons for your success is that you're willing to experiment and try those new things. And it's okay to learn a lesson and to do something that doesn't work out and be like, you know what, I'm probably not going to try that again. That's just how you grow and learn in any sort of space.
Yep.
Well, another thing that's kind of unique to your channel, maybe compared to some vendor POVs, is the fact that you have interest in multiple TCGs. Right, so you like that modern side of Pokemon, but you're also a big Dragon Ball guy.
That's my stuff.
That's your bread and butter.
I love it. I've been a huge Dragon Ball fan to the core since I was young.
I love it.
And unfortunately, it's not a huge market. It's very, very niche. Unfortunately, they don't really push the TCG side of it a lot. But I loved it. I've always felt that the artwork is better than Pokemon in a sense.
They're incredible cards.
Yeah, if we're talking like texture to texture, like the texture on Dragon Ball cards are insane.
Yeah.
And I know it's a very, very popular anime. It's just people don't know about the TCG.
What is the name of the TCG?
So there's two games. That's what makes it confusing as
Okay.
well. So the original one's called Dragon Ball Zenkai Masters, which I think is better than the other one, but it has insane textures.
Okay.
But supposedly what I've heard, I don't play the games. I just collect for the art. But what they've told me is that game is very hard to learn, to master in a sense. So they wanted to create a simpler version, and they kind of mimicked Bandai kind of mimicked One Piece, because One Piece blew up out of the water. Like, it just went crazy. So they started mimicking what One Piece was doing, and they came out with a new game called Fusion World, which initially was doing very well. Doesn't do as great anymore, but some of the arts are still pretty cool. So it's two games essentially.
So there's two games, but they're both made by Bandai?
Yeah, Bandai does both. Yep.
Okay, very cool. And the difference in the games isn't necessarily like the art, but it's just kind of like the how the game is played and
you can tell
how you get power and attack and that kind of stuff.
But you can kind of tell the difference from a Fusion World card as opposed to a Masters one. Like I think Master has more texture and stuff involved. The Fusion World mimics very similar to what One Piece does. Like if you look at the cards, you can tell.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So,
and are they are the two, like from like a value standpoint, are they both being printed, and do they both kind of retain any sort of value, or is one of them kind of surpassing the other?
So yeah, Fusion World initially was doing very well, very, very well. Unfortunately, it kind of started going downwards, and it really depends on the set, what kind of pulls there is. Right now, Masters, it used to be sometimes, even before it launched, it was selling below distro pricing.
Wow.
I've taken a lot of L's with Dragon Ball when it comes to for sealed product. I've taken a lot of L's with Dragon Ball, and I kind of started slowing down the sealed product, but it's slowly creeping up again for the master side of it, because they're not printing as much. So it's almost like they do one wave, and once it's done, it's done. And then they recently came out with serialized cards for the first time ever that you can pull.
That's huge.
And I'm all about that. We pulled one on stream. I was super hyped. I couldn't believe it. There's 5 cards. Each one is numbered to 100 in the world.
Whoa.
And we pulled one. Like, you just think about the odds of that.
It's crazy.
You know, that we got one on stream, and people have, started, comparing me to, the Dragon Ball stuff. They started bringing me. I've seen like 4 already. People bring them to me because they pull them, and it's insane. But like I said, obviously it's not Pokemon. It's very niche, but I pushed it a lot on my content. I talk about it a lot, and it's good to see that a lot of people share the same opinion as me. I got people coming by all the time. You have Dragon Ball. We like it, know, and there's not many of you out there. I think in Collecticon, there's probably, I know like 2 or 3 other people that do Dragon Ball. But I know a lot of folks like you, yourself, the Boba Store, anytime someone talks about Dragon Ball, like, hey, go to Pack Battle.
Yeah, he's the guy. Yeah. I love that. And I think it's important to, remember that even though this is, a side hustle, or even for some people a full-time business, it needs to be fun, right?
Yeah.
And you need to focus on IPs and things that like you also like.
Fun fact: my PC is way better with Dragon Ball than it is with Pokemon.
Yeah.
I love my Dragon Ball PC. Need to make a video on it here pretty soon, but
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, my Dragon Ball PC is 100 times better than my Pokemon. Pokemon involves a lot of sealed and a little bit of 151 stuff. So
Yeah, I love that, man. Well, let's pivot into one of the main topics I wanted to chat about today, which is the fact that you are a vendor who travels so much. You make all this content, but then you're not even doing this full time. You still manage to hold down the fort with that full-time job, and you got the family and everything like that, which is an incredible feat. I know that, it may seem, from the content, maybe the audience thinks, oh yeah, this is easy. You just go to a show and you record and do deals, and everyone brings you cool cards, and you just, and there's money everywhere, but it's a lot more complex than that. And I know that there are a lot of people who watch both of our content who aspire to be vendors or are beginning to vend, and haven't left their day job and are starting to think like, okay, is there a point at which I should, and how do I manage both if I don't want to, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe let's start with, how are you kind of, I guess, perceiving the opportunity for yourself as it concerns, vending at shows in comparison to having a day job, and do you ever want to make a switch, and what do you think about when it comes to that?
Yeah, I've always thought about it, can I do this full time? Can I just do cards full time? Because like you said, it's a lot, right? So got the wife, the 2 kids, full-time job, and then trying to edit, travel. I was using PTO to travel, and then you only get so much PTO. So I was trying to be more selective of where to go and stuff, and shout out to my wife. She's very supportive. She comes out to the shows with me. She helps me out with a lot of stuff in the back end. She's awesome. So do I see myself? I do, but it's, and like I said, most people don't know this, but I do. I have a 9 to 5, and the reason why I don't, I probably could. I could probably just say, you know what, I'll balls to the wall.
Just jump in.
Jump in and do it like I did with vendor POVs. Let me just do this full time, But I don't think it'd be fair to my family, my kids, and my wife, because we have a certain lifestyle today, right? We do things. We go out to eat. We go on vacations. We go to Disney. Yada, yada, yada. But, how am I going to explain it to them? We can't go out to eat. We can't travel. I'm not selling enough at the conventions.
Yeah.
The content's not doing well. We're not getting as many views, so we're not making money or whatever the case is.
I love it. Yeah.
So I think it's not fair to them, and I don't want to be put in that situation, because for me, it's fun right now.
Yeah.
I enjoy coming out, hanging out with people, doing deals, and going back home, editing the videos. I enjoy doing that right now. But if it comes to the point that I'm stressing because I'm not making enough, the videos aren't performing, because everyone goes through a dry route, right?
Sure, yeah. YouTube views is cyclical.
You might be booming one day, you're loving life, but then you go 2-3 months, you're just kind of steady going, and nothing's really popping off, right? So I don't want to be put in that situation that I start not enjoying this, stressing that I'm not selling enough and stuff like that. So my 9 to 5 covers our lifestyle, covers the bills, it covers us going out to eat, it covers the vacations and everything, and I don't have to stress about the Pokemon side of things. This is its own entity. I don't really take money from my 9 to 5 and put it over here, and I don't take my Pokemon stuff and put it over here.
Totally.
2 separate entities, and I think I'm going to keep it that way until I see a significant change on this side of things.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said,
until it becomes so advantageous that you couldn't not do it.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it'd be fair to my family to be put in that situation. So I will continue doing it the way I am. I'll still have my 9 to 5. It's a grind, because it feels like, I get to work from home, so it's a blessing.
Okay, that's good to know.
So the wife is a stay-home mom. She stays with our youngest. He's there all the time, so he's constantly always. He doesn't know life without us. He's always been there. We've always been home since COVID.
How old is he?
He's 4. That's my
awesome.
youngest is 4, and my oldest is 10. So he's in school all day.
Love it.
And my youngest, he doesn't know life without us. Like, he's a COVID baby, so he's seen us. He probably doesn't even think I work. He probably just sees me in the office all day, and he's like, this guy doesn't even work.
Dad belongs here.
Yeah. So I enjoy that, and like I said, until some significant changes happen, I probably would do it. It's kind of thinking of my family in mind. Like, I don't want to be putting them in situations that some drastic things have to change in the household, or me stressing and not having fun anymore.
Yes.
I just want to keep it the way it is right now. So
I want to dive into some of those things here in a minute, but before we chat, and I want to like pose some harder questions and see what you think about them.
Yeah.
Before we do that, though, how are you managing to balance all of this right now? Because you've been vending like pretty seriously now for over a year.
Yep.
And that's a lot of travel. And you said your wife's very supportive and doing a lot in the back end, but she also, you know, probably there's a lot of times where you don't get to spend time with each other because you're choosing to travel and or edit content and all the other things, sourcing and pricing and all the work that goes on behind the scenes. And then you got kids and all that kind of stuff, and you probably have family that you see either in the area or other parts of the country. So how are you managing to balance it without getting burnt out and overwhelmed, and is that even possible?
It's hard. I'll give you a quick day in the life of, you know, pack battle, right?
I love it. Yeah, let's hear it.
A really quick one, right? So I wake up, obviously, gotta work 9 to 5. Take a lunch break around 12, and usually I'll try to find a clip and try to do my short or my YouTube reel or whatever the case is. I try to do it then and there, midday, to post to all platforms. I'll try to find a quick clip.
So instead of resting on lunch, you're making content.
Yeah, I'm eating at the kitchen table with the wife and kids. We're eating, and I'm trying to edit a video to post out for my short. I try to do one short a TikTok every single day. It's the same one that goes on all platforms.
Yeah.
But I try to do one every day, and I've been pretty consistent. Every now and then I kind of, you know, slack off a little bit, but do that. Hopefully I get it done, post that out, go back to work. I usually clock out of work around 4. The kids are home. My son does jujitsu. He does martial arts. I take him to do that. You know, he does his martial arts jujitsu. That's about an hour. Come back, we all eat, and then just kind of hang out for a little bit. With, you know, we might go for a walk at the park, watch TV for a little bit with the kids. You know, fast forward a little bit later. Sometimes me and my wife watch anime. We like to watch a lot of anime.
That's
you know,
cool.
She's a bigger anime, you know, lover than I am.
I need to get some recommendations from you.
Oh yeah, we watch everything. She watches everything. I'm more like, I need to have like fighting type of animes. That's what I like. I like the fighting ones.
I love it.
But so recently, we watched Solo Leveling. I know that's a really popular one. So we watched that. We'll probably knock out 3 to 4 episodes. You know, chill with her for a little bit, and then, you know, it's around 8:30. My oldest is going to bed. My wife and the little one are getting ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
And instead of going to bed with them, I stay up.
Yep.
You know, let me edit some videos for a little bit. You know, my boys hit me up. Let's play some Call of Duty. I'm not gonna say no. So I play some Call of Duty with friends. You know, we play for an hour and a half. Maybe after I'm done, I'll edit again for a little bit, you know? What I learned is I have to try to chop it up. I can't sit there and try to zombie it out and try to knock out, because it's 8 hours of footage.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. You know, people think you probably do it like that. It's not.
No.
It takes a long time. And that's why it takes me so long to try to upload my videos. You know, you guys do a really great job of, you probably get this, you know, you're Houston out in a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at most, right? You know, I'm always a little bit behind. Like, I'm still working on my Chicago stuff. I'll upload those and I'll get to Houston. So that's why it kind of takes me longer than it would, because I kind of do all my editing. I do it all. I've had some people help me, you know, probably have them help me in the future as well, just to add at least the pictures, the captions, things like that. But as far as the raw footage and showing what I want to show, you know, I do that, you know, and it takes a long time. And I try to break it up, man, because if you're going to sit there, you know, 8 hours a day just staring at the screen trying to do it, it doesn't, and it burns you out quick.
Yeah.
There's been times that I'm just like, I just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And I just kind of maybe skip a night, 2 nights to try to, you know, refocus, and then I'll go back at it again. But it's tough, man. That's kind of like a quick day in the life, what kind of goes down. So you got to spend time with the family and kind of do edit whenever you can in between.
Well, what we're talking about, though, is that, like, you are being very intentional with using your time, and you have to in order to be able to accomplish all the things that you're doing. You're working and also creating content and traveling and everything, and that's just not possible if you're not sacrificing sometimes, but also being very organized. And in some of those times when you don't want to do it, you still do it. You still buckle down, sit down, and make it happen.
You gotta do it, bro, or else you're never gonna get done, right? You just have to. I think the biggest thing with our you know, community and stuff is you gotta be consistent, right? You know, if you're taking, you know, 2-3 months to upload, if you're only uploading once every 2-3 months, you're not gonna see the results you want to see, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people, try to post at least once a day. If it's a short, long form, every couple weeks if you can, or even more often if you can or not, but just trying to be consistent.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what kind of separates, you know, people that want to do it, and people that are really about it.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some people that started and then kind of gave up on it. You know, and then they still vend and stuff, but they don't really do videos. And it's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole different beast that I think people don't really see from the outside.
Yeah, it's like having another job and adding another job on top of that.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot back to kind of what you were talking about with, you know, why you haven't gone full time.
Yeah.
And first of all, before I kick off some of these questions, which are going to be a little bit more like, tell me exactly what you think about this. I want to say that totally respect your decision. I think you're crushing it. Have a ton of respect for the way that you're doing this. And one of the reasons I want to hear your perspective on some of these questions is because I haven't been in your exact situation, but I've been in a similar situation where I had the full-time job and was like, man, like this is going pretty well with the vending. Should I try to pivot? What are the signs? What are the things that would tell me it's time to make that change?
Yeah.
And obviously I made a different decision than you did. So maybe let's start there. One of the things that I was thinking about when I had my full-time job and was also vending and was thinking about making the leap to full-time vending was that if I stay in my full-time job and kind of think that, well, I need to balance both so that, you know, my lifestyle can stay the exact same, for example, then I'll never get to a point where I'm uncomfortable enough to really put forward that oh crap type, that urgency.
You gotta do it.
Yeah,
do
right.
The work, right?
Because there's something to like that entrepreneurial spirit that like when you don't have another option, that gear changes and you have to go make it happen. And I think I was more similar to you, thinking that like, no, we're probably going to be fine. There's never going to be a situation where we're like homeless because we, you know, are Pokemon vendors. But I did believe that there is a kind of a different level of urgency when you're like, hey, this is my thing now. I have to make it work, and there isn't really a plan B as of right now. So what's kind of your take on which one of those mentalities is the right one, and for you or for maybe somebody else who's watching the video?
Yeah, like you said, sometimes that's what it really takes, right? You know, you got to put your back is against the wall. It's like, all right, either this happens or you know, it's not going to go well.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, I'm trying to balance it out because I don't want to affect my family's lifestyle too much, right? Because I think we really enjoy what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I think eventually, you know, maybe I'm not going to wait to make just as much as I do in my 9 to 5.
Sure.
Maybe it is, you know, maybe I make a little less than I do, but now we're, like you said, we're constantly, you know, having to grind, having to do it. You know, I'm exploring other opportunities, not just vending, you know, ripping ships, you know, maybe we open up a brick and mortar shop in the future or something to add more. You know, it can't just be just the vendor POVs.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out what's going to help me make that push. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of exploring, trying to figure out, you know, should I do this? Should I not? But it's a lot harder when you got kids and you got the wife, right?
The responsibility is serious.
Yeah, you know, and we have a house and everything. And it's like, you know, I don't want to put everything at risk, right? So, but just doing what I'm doing now, just trying to do more content, and eventually I think I'll know, like, you know what, let's just go for it. Like, kind of like I did with the vendor of POBs. You know, I just said I'm going for it.
Yeah.
But in a safe manner, I guess, not being a completely reckless, because it's not just me. You know, I got to think about my family.
No, I've heard it said that like, hey, if you're interested in doing something on your own as an entrepreneur, like this or anything else, do your best to kind of pull that business, that boat close to the dock, so that when you step off the dock, the place of security, you don't have to do the splits to get there. You know, you can do it more safely, more, you know, in a more calculated way than just burning the boats and just like, hey, we're doing this and there's no plan Bs.
Yeah, and I think the way I'm approaching it, you know, and maybe a lot of people will approach it the same way. You do it, you grind it out. If you have a job, or I do both for a year, whatever works for you. And then if you do decide to take that leap of faith, you're in a better spot as opposed to, you know, if I made a killing my first show, you know, I'm not going to quit my 9 to 5 and just go balls to the wall without actually, you know, having some time in the space.
Yes.
Because, you know, maybe you have a great first show, and then the next 3 years are like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
It's not what
Didn't
I thought
go
it was
so
going to
well.
be. And then you just quit your job and everything out of nowhere. So like I've been in it for about a year and a half now. So I'm getting to the point that I feel like if I did take that leap of faith, I think we'd be fine.
Yeah.
The channel has grown. We get a lot of support.
Yeah,
and a lot of
you're a
live
brand
streams.
name these
Yeah.
days, Pack Battle.
live streams and everything goes well.
Yeah.
Appreciate everyone that supports the content and stuff like that. So hopefully here in the near future, we make that leap of faith.
I love that, man. Well, let's give a little game to the audience here now that they kind of know where you're coming from. Obviously,
Yeah.
they know where I'm coming from. You mentioned just right there, sometimes you're going to have a show that's just you kill it and you sell a bunch or you make a lot of good deals. And sometimes there's going to be shows that just aren't so hot. So what are some of the things that you do that are in your power to set yourself up so that you have the highest chance of having a really good show? How do you get ready?
So sometimes I'll talk about it, in my videos or, some Instagram stories, kind of let people know. Anytime I pick up cards, I'll post it on Instagram, today's pickups, and someone out there, I always get people, hey, you're going to have that Collecticon or you're going to have that or stuff like that. So just sharing what you're going to have. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Because if people know you have something, they'll come to you to get that.
Yep.
So I try to have a lot of that. I try to have a variety, right? So I do singles, I do slabs now, I do sealed product, I have a variety of things, right? So trying to, I guess, be more appealing to the average person, because not every single person that comes to the table knows who I am.
Totally.
But I have variety, so people are willing to stop me. This guy has sealed, this guy has slabs, this guy has Dragon Ball, One Piece, Pokemon. So just trying to, open my gates to have multiple
cast a
things.
wide net.
Yeah. And like I said, not every single person that stops by, but they see things that I have, and they see the banner and they're like, they see me talking to people and pointing to the camera. Oh, you do content? And then they look me up. So it's like a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
But just being very vocal and share what you're going to have, I think does the best. And being aware of what's going on as well. Like for me, I like to look at Collecticon and see what the voice actor lineup is going to be. I know if the Dragon Ball Z voice actors, Sean and Chris, if they're going to be there, Dragon Ball is going to sell.
That's a great point.
Maybe if Veronica, the original voice of Ash, is going to be there, maybe some Pokemons, if you have any Ash Pokemon cards, will do very well.
Yeah.
Certain voice actors will bring in crowds. I think that's what the thing about Collecticon. It's not just the TCG side, but people come in because they're fans of the voice actors.
Yeah.
If you have any kind of product that they can grab from you to go get signed, that is also a very, very, very good thing to do.
A little bit of strategy there.
Being aware of what's going on at the convention. Who's performing.
Yeah.
Waka is a huge Dragon Ball fan. He stopped by my table in Atlanta.
Shout out Waka Flocka.
Yeah, Waka Flocka. So it's my guy there. Just being aware of who's going to be there. And, some voice actors, love other animes. I've met, Adam MacArthur. He is the voice of Jujutsu Kaisen. He loves One Piece. He loves Japanese Pokemon as well. So just knowing who's going to be there and kind of strategize to see what's going to work the best at that show.
I like that. Yeah, well, that requires you to have some forethought and make those plans and look things up and be prepared for that. What are some of the things, and we talked about this earlier, how you've been willing to buy a card or a type of card you've never bought before, or whatever it may be, try a new TCG, something like that. And sometimes that works out great and it becomes a part of your business going forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work out great and you kind of never do it again.
Exactly.
What are some of those things that you kind of tried and it didn't work that well, and so you've sworn off it, and tell us that story, and so we can kind of learn a lesson with you.
Yeah. So I think just being aware of certain TCGs. I think I ended up buying some Lorcana stuff initially. I mean, I like Disney. I mean, who doesn't like Disney? I'm like, let me buy some of these cards. It did not really go well for me, so I kind of stopped doing that. I tried doing Digimon.
Really?
I mean, I know a little bit about Digimon, but there's some cool cards in there, so I'm like, let me try that. I used to buy sealed product. Couldn't move it, so I stopped. And I think what I really picked up on was when I was, when I'm doing sealed product, when I was ordering stuff, what sells fast? I noticed Digimon didn't sell fast. I noticed Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't sell fast. So when I was, vending, like, do I want to buy that stuff? Probably not, you know. Dragon Ball doesn't move as fast, but maybe for a PC, I'll buy it then.
Yeah.
Certain cards, obviously Pokemon, there's certain characters that do way better than other ones.
151, baby.
Exactly. So, it's trial and error. Sometimes you're going to take L's. It is what it is, Maybe, try to minimize your loss. If you sell it for a very small loss or even a break even, call it good,
Yep.
Sometimes you got to...
The cost of learning a lesson.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to probably know what's the market doing. There's been plenty of times I've bought cards and 2 weeks later they dumped.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it happens. It is what it is. You know, like I said, try to minimize your losses and just find what works well. I'm sure you probably sell, you know, mid-range, mid-era stuff way better than I do.
Sure.
You know, every now and then I have some stuff that's mid-era and it sells. I feel like everything will sell eventually. It takes the right person. Some things might take longer than others, you know, and eventually it will sell. I feel like. I think there's never been something that didn't sell. Like it takes time and it will sell, but it's just a matter of like, are you willing to hold it until who knows how long?
That's right. Yeah. There's so many unknowns when it comes to your, you know, inventory and when it's going to sell and that kind of stuff. But it does take that experience and for you to be able to start making really educated guesses about what to buy and when and how much to spend on and that kind of stuff. Well, that's tons of really good insight, Eric, and I really appreciate that. Well, let's kind of wrap it up and maybe offer one or two of your best pieces of advice for someone who is maybe wanting to get into your position, right? Who is wanting to vend, maybe wanting to make some content. What can you tell them to, you know, really help them get there in a way that you would have appreciated if you would have been able to have someone tell you that when you were in their position?
I mean, I talk about this on stream sometimes. People ask me all the time, hey, how do I get started?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, my best advice to you is most people have a small collection.
Yeah.
Maybe most people.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare that someone says, I want to do this and has zero Pokemon
Sure.
anything.
They're starting from something.
Something. I always tell people, you know what? Start with your PC. It's the lowest entry to get in.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna suck. There's the cards that, you know, like, damn, I pulled this. I got it graded. It's a PSA 10.
Yeah, it's tough to sell cards you have feelings about.
Yeah, because you get that sentimental value to it. Because I pulled it, this and that. Just start off with your PC. Start off with that, whether it's singles, raw. You don't have to have both, or singles or raw. Singles or slabs. You don't have to have both. Like I said, I started with just singles, no slabs. And then when I wanted to get into the slab game, what did I do? I took all my cards and got them graded. You know, and I'm not a grading expert. So yeah, some things got 10s, some got 9s. But it is what it is. You know, you take some of your raw, get it graded, now you have 2. And all the profits you make, just keep on flipping it. You know?
Yeah.
Just do that. Start off with your stuff. You don't need to start with 10, 15 G's. Like I'm telling you, man, my singles were probably $1,500 worth. I took $1,000 from the bank, and that's what I started with, and kind of flipped from there.
I love it.
You know, once you sell your stuff, there's never going to be a shortage in Pokemon in terms of like, you'll always be able to find a 151 Charizard PSA 10.
Yes.
Like it's never going to be gone, right? So even if you pulled it, maybe when you're in a better spot down the road, you buy it again. It might be higher,
Yes.
unfortunately,
Yes.
but at least, you know, get that capital to reinvest and kind of start off from there, you know. And I think that's what I kind of quickly learned, because I started like just letting go of a lot of my stuff and like, you know what, I'll just buy it later on.
Yeah.
You know, and then for the content side of things, just get used to seeing yourself. You know, I know you get nervous. Sometimes you kind of say the wrong things.
Sure.
You know, there's been plenty of times that I mispronounce Pokemon because of, you know, you're caught up.
Sure.
It's going to happen. Just get used to seeing yourself. The way I see it is, it's a lot easier for me because it's something that we're kind of passionate about. I'll talk to somebody about Dragon Ball Z all day.
Yeah.
I love it, you know?
Exactly.
It's not the same thing as, you know, having to present a PowerPoint to your job, right? Because most likely you're not even passionate about that.
Probably not.
I'm passionate about Dragon Ball, so I'll sit there and talk to somebody for 20 minutes. You know, the camera's not there, and we're just talking, right?
Yes.
So I think that's just have fun with it. You know, if you know, trial and error, see what works out. You know, you're not gonna be perfect. You know, be yourself. That's kind of like how I do it. You know.
Yeah, just jump in. You know, and there's
Just go for it.
There's so many lessons to be learned, and what I really appreciate about you, Eric, is like you're someone who has just come to terms with the idea that not everything you're gonna do is gonna be perfect on the first try.
Exactly.
But you're going to get better because you care and you're conscientious and you want to improve and you want to take care of yourself and your family. And those kinds of motivations are enough to propel you to wherever you want to be. And I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the content you make. I appreciate the way that you approach the hobby and how real you are with people. My first time ever meeting you was just in Vegas, maybe earlier this
January,
year.
yep.
Yeah. And I could tell instantly that you're, you know, a really genuine person. And that the way that you come across in your content isn't an accident. It's true that you're genuine and you take good care of people. And so I appreciate you for that, man.
No, man. Appreciate you having me on this show.
Yeah.
We appreciate all the fans out there. Like Jake said earlier, if it wasn't for you guys, we probably wouldn't be in this situation.
That's
I
right.
enjoy talking to everybody, everyone that stops by the booths, that tunes into the stream, supports on the videos.
Yep.
I say it a lot. There's always like a running joke in my comments that I'm like, this guy appreciates everything. I appreciate your appreciation.
He loves everything.
Yeah. So it's like
That's so Texas of you to say appreciate you.
yeah. So like, I'm thankful. And shout out to everybody, all the fans out there. So
Yes. Thank you guys for watching. And Eric, it's a pleasure.
like always, bro.
Till next time, brother.
Exactly.
See you guys.
Peace.